Hello, and welcome to Product Market Fit. I'm your host, Mosheh Poltorak, and my guest today is Laurel Taylor, founder and CEO of Candidly, a fintech platform aiming to solve the student debt crisis that has raised over $45 million from investors and saved students over $1.2 billion in loan repayments. Hello, Laurel. So excited to talk to you today.
Hi, Mosheh. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, Laurel, kick us off. Why don't you tell us what is Candidly and who do you serve?
So Candidly, we exist to crush student debt and empower hardworking Americans to go beyond debt into wellness and ultimately wealth as a workplace benefit. So we are offered by employers as well as wealth managers, 401k providers, the entire ecosystem that serves employers and that are really bringing financial wellness, well-being solutions to market. So we are an embedded finance solution distributed by actually the largest financial services companies in the world today.
Excellent. And just for a reference point where you're at, I mentioned the 1.2 billion in debt savings to customers. Can you give us a sense of scale, either in terms of like number of companies that you work with, or like how big are the companies that you work with in employee size, or where you're at in your growth journey?
Yes, happy to. So we are today, the number of employers that we're serving either directly, working directly with employers, or serving employers through their partners like UBS or Vanguard, or Empower, PNC, Guild. We are serving about 1,000 employers today. We're poised to serve 1 in 4 Americans. And we're actually just about to close another partnership that will enable us to serve 1 in 3 working Americans. And we actually serve employers of all different sizes and scale. So the SMB market, the mid-market, as well as the enterprise, or what some of our partners call the large mega jumbo market. I think what's really exciting when we look at the average number of employees that we serve per employer from the second half of last year, our average employer size is now 22,500 employees. So very much the enterprise. And if we look at year over year historical, the year prior, the average employee size was about 500 employees. So we went from serving an average employer size of 500 to 22,500 within 9 months. So that was a really exciting change to see in the market.
Congrats on all that success and traction. That's amazing. What made you get into this? I'm fascinated by your motivation in starting this and building this up.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I had early in the beginnings of Candidly, which was previously called FutureFuel, FutureFuel.io. I had someone ask me, what makes you qualified to solve this problem? Because I actually didn't have any fintech experience. So fintech found me by living the problem. And I grew up in a household where I knew I was going to college. I knew how I was going to college. That was never a question. Through scholarships, grants, federal loans, private student loans. My mom, who is a highly educated woman and social worker, making $24,000 a year, she knew she was going to take out a Parent Plus loan. What we didn't know between the two of us is that we would miss out on 2 decades of compound interest on wealth while paying down debt. And at the time, I was going to school at MIT. I was leading a global business unit for Google. Absolute honor and dream to be able to pursue both opportunities. And honestly, I had a lot of shame about. No one I knew talked about student debt or seemed to have to deal with it. And so I really dug into the data. And what I found from the MIT Age Lab in concert with TIAA, 80% of people who have student debt only pay down their student debt first. We move through finances in a sequential manner versus simultaneous. But that means that we can miss out on compound interest where it works its greatest magic in the first 10 years of our career. And also when hardworking Americans have their last opportunity to save before retiring. So these two precious bookends lost. in that journey. And so that was when this became my path and purpose. And when I became uniquely suited to solve the problem, not because I was an expert in fintech, but because I had total heart and connection to the problem that had to be solved.
Yeah, it definitely sounds familiar in how people think about the stages and the sequence of like, let me take care of my debt first. I'll pay that off and then I'll start saving. And like you mentioned, if you do that, you're missing out on the compounding of those savings. And there's probably a more balanced approach. So let's go back to the product a little bit, just better understanding of
Sure.
what you're offering. There's a fintech component to it. There's an education component to it. Are you serving, well, I'm assuming a big part of what you're serving are employees that have debt, they're trying to pay down that debt and giving them tools to do that. But are you also serving employees that are maybe planning for their next level of education or doing education while they're working and helping them do that as well?
Yes, great question. So as we've evolved over time, we've gone beyond student debt. We are the leading AI student debt and savings optimization platform that manages the full life cycle of education expenses. So, exactly where you went, Mosheh, we have a number of our clients, both employers and users, who said it's awesome that you help people when they already have debt, but how do we mitigate that and avoid debt in the first place? And so we now enable families to prepare a plan for college, to save in 529 plans, and then also to pay for college. So, when I went to school at MIT, I was given a 9% interest rate on a student loan, even though I had a credit score over 800. And then I went to, 20 different providers trying to find a lower cost solution. Of course, that should be marketplace enabling employees to access the lowest cost of capital. So we've built a robust experience on the front end of that journey. And what we've also heard from our employers and our channel partners is that, one, we know from the data, the student debt crisis and the savings crisis go hand in hand. But we also know not everybody has student debt, whether they actually didn't pursue college or they've already paid it down or they're one of the lucky ones that just were able to avoid it altogether. So we now offer an emergency savings solution. 60% of Americans don't have $500 for an emergency expense, and the ability to just auto deduct from payroll, right, and automate those behaviors. So we're now, what's been really exciting is to be able to address the full life cycle of education expense, to be able to address the savings crisis, and then through really major policy levers that have been pulled, enable simultaneous progress between student debt pay down and wealth creation, which we'll talk about as well.
Wow. Sounds like you're expanding to a broader kind of financial wellness product beyond just the student debt. I want to come back to the regulation or some of those acts recently that have benefited your business and some of them perhaps created some turbulence while they were being discussed. The fact that you chose to go B2B2C from the get-go, right, to sell to employers and now sell through partners instead of going B2C, was that always the approach? Did you try B2C first and then realize it makes more sense to go through the employer? I'm always curious about that decision because a lot of investors, especially the cautious ones, in flyover country, well, I'm in Texas and, like the coasts are very, aggressive, go for the moon. Yeah. But over here, they're like, why don't you do the B2B play? Why, why are you trying to do B2C? I'm curious about the decision-making of that.
Sure. It's a great question. So one, I have only known B2B. So my career has been in B2B solutions. Also, while at Google, I really saw firsthand what business models that are embedded in an inflationary CAC experience, which direct to consumer, I think there are pros and cons to both, right? B2B as well as direct to consumer. Direct to consumer, you have to potentially raise hundreds of millions of dollars in order to cover the CAC of that user. So I wanted to be in a deflationary CAC motion. And really the big bet that I made when founding the company, beyond creating the digital experience, was the belief that ultimately employers would offer benefits that address student debt within the workplace, just like any other benefit, 401k, tuition reimbursement, healthcare. And knowing 70% of students are graduating with student debt, that it would become a new normal. So the B2B, I once heard, so Altos, we have the honor and privilege to work with Altos, who led our Series B round. And there have been a number of discussions about, based on your business model, you find the investor you deserve. And I thought that was a really interesting way of framing direct-to-consumer. Investors who love direct-to-consumer are not going to love Candidly because we are B2B2C. Investors who really have a strong point of view on B2B or B2B2C or embedded finance find what we're doing super interesting. So, it was a go-to-market strategy view, but also financing. I am aware that only 1.4 to 1.6% of funding goes to women, and that I would really, really need to stretch those dollars. And so I chose what I believe to be a more capital efficient approach.
Really, really good point about the inflationary versus deflationary CAC. Customer acquisition in B2C businesses, if you don't have inherent virality in the product, like thinking like a PayPal, you have that automatic, like I'm sending it to someone. So there's an embedded customer acquisition in that. But a product like this, basically be having to get each customer one at a time, and that CAC can become exorbitant. You brought up fundraising. And of course, being a female founder, there's a challenge there, but also I would imagine being in the space that you're in. Was there a perception that, this is kind of a charity case, so to speak? There's a company that I advise that's building software and their early focus is on the nonprofit segment, and there's plans beyond that. But just because of that, automatically investors have this immediate reaction of like, oh yeah, it's for good business. It's a charity case. It's SaaS vertical software, and it's got all the same, financial projections as any other vertical software. Is that a challenge that you faced when you were pitching? Obviously, you've raised $45 million plus from top tier VCs. So how did you overcome that and convince investors to fund your company?
I think it's a really interesting one because my experience and journey, when I first founded Candidly, we created a new category. And so, by the way, being in the education business, meaning you have to educate your customers about a new category, is incredibly daunting. And because it was new, I got a lot of kind of pats on the top of the head initially. Oh, just sweet. That's so, but no, it's just great business sense, right? Our offering as a benefit reduces churn from 33% to 76%. So I've had the most sophisticated CFOs working for the largest employers in the world who say, this just pays for itself. Like this is just a self-funding proposition. 76% reduction in churn in healthcare, where the turnover is 30%. I mean, it's a really sound financial and economic argument. Our first seed check came from Jim Palermo of Breton out of Boston, and his operating partners, Mike Masterson and Doug Sullivan. And one of my favorite quotes in this meeting, it was our first meeting, and Mike Masterson is a former CTO and technologist. And he said, Laurel, I live at the intersection of altruism and greed, and you're giving me both. And so I just left that. And we are a triple bottom line company, so our investors are financial investors, but I think they also have decided, Salesforce Ventures is the impact fund, Rethink Impact, Altos, of course, Vulcan, and Circano. These are what I'd like to believe are, what I know are tier one investors, but they've decided to put their money where they can do both. They can get a really strong financial return and do good for the world.
It's a fantastic story. And everybody remembers they're the first investor that took a flyer on them. So there's a special place in your heart, I'd imagine, for that.
How did I do in the accent?
The accent was great.
I'm from Texas as well. So it's a real stretch for me, but I try.
No, it's great. Great. Going back to your growth journey, talk to me about some of those early days. Anything that you recall getting to product market fit in those early stages? Was there a moment where you said, aha, we have it? Walk me through some of the stuff that you did early on.
Sure. Yes. So early on, we were part of the Financial Health Network, and the Financial Health Network is funded by Chase. So I was in the accelerator program. I did actually join many accelerator programs in the beginning that really helped to operationalize key parts of the business, like Silicon Valley Bank and Fiserv for our payments flows. And Financial Health Network is backed by Chase. And I was sitting in there's only a very small cohort of us. I think it was like 10 a year. And the gentleman from Chase walked in and said, I just want to let you know, like, don't even try. Like, you're all going to come up to me after this presentation. You're all going to work with Chase. You're all going to want to know how to do that. And the bottom line is that is an impossibility for at least 3 years. Like, you have to be SOC type 1, type 2, PCI and FISMA compliant. You have to be able to persevere a 3-year sales cycle. You guys are probably, most of you are going to be out of money in 6 months. So you got to have 3 years of runway. You have to come in with the security posture in order to proceed past go. And of course, it's not what you want to hear, right? But it's real. And so we started with incremental progress. It was a net new category. So which employers are going to be willing to offer student loan repayment and benefits that address student debt for the workforce coming in, micro employers less than 25, then the SMB, then the mid-market. Fiserv was our first enterprise customer, then Salesforce. Then we had a large group of employers from SMB to large enterprise, which really ultimately enabled us to realize our vision of being at the table. You have to earn the right to be at the table with these customers, employers, and with the largest financial services companies in the world who need proof points. What is your evidence that this solves a real problem, that people are willing to pay for it, and that you can do business with us as, Vanguard, as an example, again, as Empowered, second largest record keeper in the US. So it was the momentum. We 10x'd our growth in 2022 was really our big inflection point in 2022 to see that year-over-year growth. And then the policy levers were pulled in 21, 22, and 21 and 22. And that also, when we started the year in 2023, Secure 2.0 had just been passed on December 29th. And Secure 2.0, had it been in market, my mom and I would have individually another $450,000 of retirement savings. And so Secure 2.0 enables employers to offer a retirement match based on qualified student loan payments. So where student debt is a blocker into retirement savings at 80%, who just don't save, it's now quite literally a booster. And employers want employees to leverage the benefits that they're offering. And they want all employees, and specifically non-highly compensated executives, to participate in the 401k plans. They don't fail discrimination testing. So this enables employers to engage a population that's disengaged, to get them into plan, enables record keepers and retirement plan advisors to increase the assets under management for any given employer or plan, as well as associated fees. So and of course, enables hardworking Americans to, assuming like an 8% return, generate $450,000 in retirement savings, even if they never put a dime into retirement savings themselves. They work for an employer that offers a retirement match for 50% of the time they're paying down their student loans. That aligns with $450,000 at the time of retirement. That's 4 times what members have today. So what happened the first 2 weeks of January, all of these record keepers that we had been in discussions with for like 5 years. I mean, literally, I have emails going back to 2017, exploded out of the gate to say, we were waiting, the legislation's passed, let's go. And so that was also a really exciting inflection point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those policy measures sound like they were a real wind at your sails, right? But preceding that, there was a lot of kind of turbulence in, from 2020 going to 2021, a lot of temporary measures. There was temporary moratoriums on debt repayment. There's a lot of talk about debt forgiveness. I'm curious how you operate as CEO of the company, trying to make plans and a roadmap where there's all this uncertainty. And I'm asking selfishly because I'm getting into the real estate space. And as you know, there's this massive litigation that's happening right now, with the agents and with the MLS. And it's going to be years before that's fully settled, and which way it goes is anybody's guess. How do you operate as CEO in that turbulent environment where, you're at the mercy of whatever, policy measures get enacted?
So indeed, the coin cuts both ways. And when I founded the business, I made the big bet that policy levers would be pulled to incentivize employers, because I believe Treasury wants to get paid back. And it's actually the federal government, right, that holds 90% of student loans. And that happened with the CARES Act, which enables employers to use their tuition reimbursement budget for past, present, and future. And then the Secure Act, which enables the retirement match. But yes, it has been a period of huge disruption. In March of 2020, as a emergency measure, it was first introduced now across two different administrations. If you have a student loan, it's a federal loan. You don't have to pay your student loan. And it's going to be 90 days. We're going to give 90 days of relief. So the moratorium on student loan payments, where individuals didn't have to pay their student loans, that was extended 9 times. And it wasn't extended. There was so much uncertainty around, as you can imagine, organizational preparedness and responsiveness to that significant of a change, and then going through it 9 times when you think it's about to be over. And quite literally 2 to 3 to 5 days before the moratorium was over, it was extended again and again and again. And if I kept doing that, it would be annoying, right? But imagine living it. So there was, that's one dynamic that we as a company had to navigate. And then 2 was Biden's proposal for one-time forgiveness of $10,000 or $20,000 for certain income brackets, and or the $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. That was largely understood by the market as it's just all going to be forgiven. So nobody has to pay their student loans. All of this is just going to be forgiven. But at the same time, we last year, even though the moratorium extended through September and the Supreme Court struck down their forgiveness measures kind of mid-year, we tripled the employer contributions flowing through our platform. So I think there are a couple of really important things there. Number one is leading an organization. It's incredibly important to stay focused on the mission of the company and why you exist, because our can-doer community really cares about the problem that we're solving for users. And what we saw was just a tremendous amount of confusion. So the users we serve, what's going on? What do I do right now? Do I pay my student loans? Do I not? Do I get into an income-driven repayment program because there's only 60 days left on the moratorium, and then I'm going to have to start paying? And then that happened 9 times. So 1 is maintaining heart and stamina. And then 2, from a product perspective, we released net new product, responding to the legislative dynamics multiple times. So for example, I don't want to go, too deep because I'll kind of geek out on it, but public service loan forgiveness, there were waivers that were introduced that were essential for workers to take advantage of because it make a massive difference in accelerating their path to forgiveness with narrow windows of time available to get into these programs, and they're complex. So we launched specific programs that enabled workers to take advantage of this unique point in time. But we were just fast twitching all over the place because the announcements would be made, and by and large, the industry was not aware of the change that was going to be announced. Student loan servicer servicing the loans. So it was a period of, really having to be incredibly dynamic.
It sounds like it requires a combination of one eye on the vision and then simultaneously being super nimble in reacting to any short-term fluctuations.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And
it's not easy.
It's the hand-to-hand combat. No, it's indeed.
Got it. So over time, you mentioned you were able to go from SMB to mid-market enterprise, and then you have been layering in partner deals, right? Where you get to sell once and you get 100 or 1,000 customers instead of selling hand to hand each company or each employer one at a time. Talk to me about some of the dynamics there. It's a fantastic channel for any B2B motion if you can get there, because like I said, it can 10x or even 100x your sales efforts, but there is nuance there. I'd love for you to walk me through kind of like at what point were you ready to explore those? And then how does it involve the founder? Much more, founder-led sales, and you can't just hire a salesperson to go make a deal with Vanguard, right? It's a little bit different. So anything that you can share there would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. So I think as the founder and CEO, many of these partnerships really did begin in 2017, 2018, and that direct involvement on major deals and major customers, not sure I can imagine a better use of time. Revenue solves almost all problems. And what we share with our partners is our goal is to be the best partner they've ever worked with. And we know that's an ambitious statement, and that is our commitment to the customer, whether it's an employer directly or our partner. And as we've continued to serve additional partners in the ecosystem, Lincoln Financial Group is one we haven't spoken about yet. It's a phenomenal partner. There is the enterprise sales cycle, which has, because it's a new category, it has evolved over time. We had a number of net new partners enter into the sales cycle last year as a result of Secure 2.0 passage. So they have compressed sales cycles from 3 to 5 years to 6 to 9 months. That's another key inflection point that you asked about earlier, which is there's urgency. The partners we now serve as kind of the intelligent side as an embedded finance, they're hearing from their employers, this is a top 3 requested benefit. If you're not offering it, we are no longer considering you for our business. So they have to respond to defend market share, to increase market share in a highly competitive landscape. It's, as we've developed the sales team, which has been phenomenal, we have an, really like elite peak performance sales organization, and more broadly, peak performance organization. What we've learned is that channel partners, it's a continuous selling motion. We are selling those partners every day, just takes on a bit of a different shape. It's sales enablement internally, sales enablement, more comms, marketing assets, because they have their own army that is descending upon the market. And we want to equip those athletes with a very simple 60 to 90 second statement that they can make, followed by a quick qualification question. And some of our partners, will run the pass all the way down and others pass the ball to us at a certain stage in that deal cycle. So we have different partners who we've configured, who've configured themselves a little bit differently. But it is a continuous effort to stay in front of these relationship managers, account executives, account managers, and will be forevermore, so that we can have, as much explosive momentum out of the gate. Because that hockey stick for any given partner, if that can happen a quarter earlier, 3 quarters earlier, a year earlier, compounding growth backed by VC companies, that's a life-changing event, right, in terms of momentum and market adoption.
Sure. I wonder organizationally, because you have these parallel needs, right, you need to sell to the partner, market to them, get them on board. Like you said, you can't just, it's not a signature and now they're generating revenue. You have to empower them because they're going out there and selling for you. Do you have parallel marketing and sales teams that, or customer enablement, sales enablement teams specifically dedicated by partner or by market? Like how do you think of that organizationally?
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. So it's a really close partnership between sales, implementation, onboarding, and marketing. So that enterprise lifecycle is flawless. We have our NPS scores on implementation and onboarding is 90, like unbelievable. The benchmark is 40. And our coaching is NPS scores are 93.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And also that's, again, I'm super grateful for the incredible can-doers that we have within the company who execute at that level every day is phenomenal. So we have organized around the account executive that's working closely with that partner. And, of course, I'm at the ready at any time. I'm on the road a lot, meeting with customers. Then it moves into the implementation, which is, of course, really where we're heavily engaging product and engineering. Then the launch, which is our customer support team, and then ongoing. Now, the MarComs, the level of engagement that we deliver, one of the primary problems we're solving for customers, whether they're channel partners or employers, is engagement. So we are solving specific problems. So where financial wellness will generally see kind of 4 to 5% engagement across an entire employee population, we're seeing upwards of 30%. And that's when an emergency savings isn't offered and layered on. So we have a playbook, and if we can run that play, we deliver engagement that often is 10x more than what the partner sees on their own. So we integrate that conversation about the MarComs logic-based sequence to the user level very early in the sales cycle because the general reaction is no. The first reaction is no. No, you're not going to communicate to my customers' employees. No, you're not going to inundate them. We have to sequence this with our larger conversation and MarComs that we're already delivering. And then we show them the data. And we say, okay, well, we can start that. We understand those are super legitimate concerns, right? We can start that way. Can we show you other partners that have done that? Because this is what their engagement looks like when we don't run our playbook, and it's not good. And here's what our engagement looks like when we can run our playbook. And it's an order of magnitude greater in terms of outcomes and financial outcomes that we're generating. So we're really trying to accelerate and compress that learning curve for each of our partners, because then we're able to provide value much earlier in the life cycle of that partnership. And if there's one thing I've learned, and if there's one thing for any founder listening to this discussion, that has to be in the master services agreement. It has to be in the contract. Like, we are able to communicate X number of times to the participants downstream because it is essential. It's like it's essential for engagement, for impact, for mission, and for value delivery to the customer.
Right. It's so important. When it comes to B2B2C, you have to think of the end user is not your customer, but you absolutely have to think about how they're using the product. Whether or not it directly drives monetization, if you're charging on a per user basis or not. It's certainly, if there's no engagement, you're not going to have any retention. So even harder to do in an environment where you're 2 layers removed, right? Any tips around product development and customer discovery?
We invest significant time and attention. Our marketing department is very focused on the assets that we create for our customers, our partners, our employers, to help them train the trainer, right? To help them understand the full value and the different capabilities that we bring and the user level assets that we have also generated. So we want to ensure that our customer really doesn't have to sit down and think when putting pen to paper on, like, how do I introduce this? How do we talk about this? should the CHRO announce that we're offering this amazing benefit to our employees? Absolutely. And here's the template, and it's all written, and here's the library of assets, and here's the repository for how you gain access to that, and it's always updated. So I think it's, we have actually not done deals, and we have walked away from deals where we did not, and that's really, really hard to do. I mean, obviously, where we did not feel there was real commitment from the partner, or where there would be access to the sales force. Because if you're selling through someone else's sales force, to be top of mind for any person to talk about something in the field, they have to feel comfortable and confident. If they're not confident or comfortable, they're not going to talk about it. So we have to be able to train the trainer. And it's just something we've become really passionate about.
Yeah. Super valuable lessons, not just in embedded finance, but when you're selling in healthcare, often you're selling through distributors, and a lot of use cases, distributors or partners can be a great channel, but all of these things that you're talking about in empowering them to represent you well and effectively sell on your behalf, all of that needs to come into play. So it sounds like you have a pretty sophisticated operation in order to facilitate that. I wanted to ask, you dropped AI in a little earlier when you were talking about the product and the vision. How does AI come into play here? Is it something that you need to say because everybody's AI now, or is it inherent to the core product and the vision for the company?
It is inherent to the core vision of a company, and we've been using AI for many years, kind of before it was sexy. There are a few ways that we are leveraging AI that we're really excited about. One from a product, and then others from efficiencies, which aren't as sexy, but are so important as you begin to scale in terms of unit economics, margins. The margin drives the mission, right? Margin drives the mission. So how to be more efficient in the delivery. From a product perspective, so I have a, not to speak about this in the negative sense, but I am, and I'm not a huge fan of content by itself, because someone can have all the knowledge in the world, but if they don't take action on that, it is like I read a quote the other day, the man who cannot read is no different from the man who does not read. I thought, wow, that is so powerful. So we believe in micro actions and transactions that transform outcomes. Personalization of the user experience from the get-go. If someone gives us 2 minutes of their life, we're going to save them an average of $358 a month. $358 a month. That's, where else can you get a $4,000 to $5,000 post-tax raise on an annual basis? So we want to get after it very quickly in the experience. So it's not generic. The user is going to provide us data in order to inform the approach. But as we're thinking about, for example, ChatGPT, it's not particularly good at math. There are a few deficiencies. It's not good at math. It's inconsistent, can harbor biases, hallucinates. But when we combine underlying technology of large language models with portfolio optimization, and this is where our point of view that kind of the whole employee benefits space is largely focused on the asset side of the balance sheet, but the vast majority of Americans are in the liability side of the balance sheet. So we've created a proprietary portfolio optimization algorithm, which we call ALCA, which is the only bird that can fly underwater and above water as well. So you're underwater until you're out of debt. You want to do that simultaneously. That is really powerful when you can combine large language models with portfolio optimization to address some of the deficiencies that we've talked about. And this is a API-only product we've had purchased by some of the largest life insurers in the world. And they're kind of plugging in our algo into their broader, because what problem are we solving for the partner? Revenue. We're a revenue driver for our partner. We're delivering greater revenue to the company on their core product by solving a critical problem that's been unaddressed, that then creates cash flow and liquidity. And then that cash flow and liquidity can go into retirement savings, emergency savings, financial protection. So that's one area where our corpus includes all of the congressional records around all of the student debt programs, the income-driven programs, and the public service loan forgiveness programs. So we were already, we had already deployed that solution actually a couple of years ago in our starting of work. And now we've layered on portfolio optimization with large language models. Some of the other areas where we're leveraging AI that maybe aren't as sexy, but are very sexy when you look at the numbers in the back end. There's, in a few areas of our business, loan statement reviews, they're applying AI to that to be able to remove the need to move through human review on all of that documentation, being able to provide decision assist on highly complex challenges around student debt that require like double consolidation and all these gymnastics. That's really helpful for our coaches to have a central repository to query, for our customer support team to have, so that we're giving consistent information based on our unique corpus and, like 1,000-hour plus of coaching calls that have been transcribed.
Yep. The margin drives the margin. Like that. One last question here before we move on to our exciting lightning round. When we talked, you shared a contrarian take about hiring. I'd love for you to elaborate on that, if you would.
I think it's one of the most important jobs of a founder and a CEO is to attract exceptional talent. And that is forevermore a critical. The culture of any company is so important. And I think we have actually something really special with our culture. And so one of the consistent concerns that comes up across our can-doers is protecting and honoring and nurturing that culture, which is empathy, collaboration, problem solving, which is the term that we say in Portuguese because our original dev team, our OGs, as I call them, our OCs, are out of Portugal, and humility, and having the humility to always learn from each other, put each other in for our users to be of service to them, and servant leader mentality. So what I've also realized in the past, so I'm the last person to interview any candidate. And my perspective previously was my job is to bring that candidate over the line. And now my point of view is it's my job to talk the person out of taking the job. We are a culture that works hard. We have a really strong work ethic. We are not for everybody, for sure. And I think often there can be a romantic notion of working for a startup. It's a total grind. It's relentless and got to have stamina. I mean, it's like a hit run, but over a marathon, maybe a few or several, I don't know. But so really trying to give a realistic day in the life to make sure that we're both fully informed before entering into a really precious relationship that is demanding.
Yeah. That must be so hard to do though, because that candidate has gone through all the process and then you're at the end trying to convince them out of it.
So hard. Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of what Brian Long said on the podcast a few episodes ago, that your core values should turn people away. They're not there for everybody, right? They're there to differentiate you and to be a selection criteria. Laurel, I'm really enjoying this, but we're running out of time here and we like to close out with a lightning round, but I'm going to try something new with our lightning round. I'm going to offer 3 different themes without you knowing the questions of each of these, and you get to choose the theme. The options are favorite things, heroes and villains, or how the turntables turn. It's like a game show.
Okay, we're going to go with option number 1.
Okay, my most favorite things. Can you share a book recommendation? Actually 2, one fiction and one nonfiction.
Ooh, Hard Thing About Hard Things, just one of the best of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was reading Nelson Mandela's, I'm going to have to pick it up. And also, I'll bring it over. Good Power from Gina Rometty.
Say that again. Good Power
from Gina Rometty.
Fantastic. Thank you for those. What are your favorite podcasts to listen to?
Okay. I'm all in.
Okay.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Got it. Do you have a favorite bestie?
Oh, hey.
Put you on the spot.
I think Jason.
Okay.
Yeah.
World's greatest moderator.
I find him very humble. Like, he has a lot of humility. I really, yeah.
Cool. Can you recommend a movie or TV show that you've seen recently that you enjoyed?
A movie or TV show? I need to spend more time watching movies.
Speaking of that hard work ethic, you need to relax a little bit.
I mean, it's an oldie, but a goodie, Gladiator.
Okay. Why not? I remember that one.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
That's a good one. The classics never die, right?
Exactly.
What's one thing that you've bought recently for under $100 that you love?
One thing that I bought, okay, this is kind of ridiculous, but these. So
Are those slippers?
My niece, these are slippers, and my mom and my niece, I took them to Tahoe for 3-generation holiday, and this is ridiculous, and we all wore these, and they're right next to me. So as you can see, I'm still enjoying them.
That's wonderful. I love it. What's one core value or principle that you live by or try to live by?
Humility, for sure. I mean, being a founder is an ass-kicking journey where you are humbled about every 5 seconds. So really listening to others and also being independent of the good opinion of others at the same time.
Amazing. Laurel, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this. Tell listeners how they can find out how they can continue the conversation if they want to, or learn more about Candidly and anything else that you want to share with the audience to close us out. And I'll put links to everything in the show notes.
Oh, amazing. Okay, well, you can check us out at getcandidly.com. Please ask if you're a founder, please offer us, it's a way of being inclusive and offering critical benefits to the full spectrum of wealth and wellness within the workplace. And, just really appreciate the time today, and would just say for all the founders out there, just keep going.
Just keep. Yeah. Thank you so much, Laurel. Wishing you tons of success with Candidly and with everything else.
Thank you, Mosheh. It's a pleasure to be here today.